Score, the podcast. The only show taking you inside the studios of the world's most celebrated composers and musicians.
I'm Kenny Holmes. That's Robert Kraft.
Yes,
We're all
am.
independent. Happy 4th of July to everybody. I hope you had a great holiday, and we're excited to be back. We're fully into summer now. It's freaking hot, and so is the box office with our guests' score and film today. We're going to be talking with Andrea Datzman, who scored Inside Out 2, which is the #1 film of 2024. At last check, it's getting close to $500 million domestic, and it's over $1 billion worldwide. So she's just killing it. I think what is it, the 54th movie ever in history to
and going higher. And I think it's in its third week at #1. Clearly, this weekend it will have some competition, but it's crushing it. And
Yeah.
Andrea
kind of came out like everyone expected it to do well, but I mean, doubling Dune, I don't think anyone expected that.
Yeah, it's just huge, and she is so deserving of not only to score the film, but did an incredible job. So excited. Kenny, have you seen any movie, speaking of great movies, before we get to Inside Out 2, seen anything that I should see that you recommend?
Yeah, The Bike Riders.
Oh, I really want to see it.
I mean, I thought it would be good, but I was pleasantly surprised. I thought it was great. My wife's a big fan of Sons of Anarchy, so she was excited to see a biker movie. But to me, it felt a little bit like a Sopranos mixed with Sons of Anarchy, but really great. The female lead, I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but she was amazing in the film, and Austin Butler's great.
Yeah, it's Jodie Comer.
Jodie Comer, yes.
And Austin Butler and Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy also great in it. Yeah, it was really good. Music by David Wingo. Definitely go check it out. It's maybe underrated. It's getting good reviews, but I thought I think it was in the 80s on Rotten Tomatoes, but it deserved higher. It was really good. And Inside Out 2, also really fun. And you know what?
Definitely.
You know what I'm loving? These movies are like under 2 hours or right at 2 hours, and it's so nice to just pop into the movies. It's like a soccer match. It's just in and out. There's no, extra innings. I mean, as much as we like these longer films when it's a great story, I'm so a docu-series and TV series guy now that it's just hard to sit for 3.5 hours with people in the room talking and making noises.
Oh, it's so funny. You can't hit pause. I find myself sitting in a theater, with my thumb going, hey, can I pause this just for a minute? Speaking of docu-series, I've seen 2 docu-series. I'm on a music documentary jag on steroids. I'm watching everything I can. 2 incredible series back to back, limited series. Of course, Stax, Soulsville, USA, which is the story of the Memphis label that had Otis Redding and Booker T and the MGs, and it is superb. It's just brilliant. Also on PBS, of all locations, to have the 3-part series on disco, which is also brilliant and very interesting story of the origins of disco and the demise, which we have to thank avaricious record companies for kind of taking it too far and having novelty hits when people wanted, the real deal. But the whole era sort of blew up. But it was really, both those are so interesting of a particular period in American music. But I'm excited to hear from Andrea Datzman telling us what it's like to actually, since scoring is such an emotional thing, sadness, anxiety, embarrassment, disgust. My God, how do you write music for those emotions?
It's kind of funny too, because it's like everything's right on the nose. It's very meta. It's you're scoring a film. Normally, the score is there to make those emotions apparent, but they're literally called those emotions. So it's kind of funny. It's like, do you write sad music for sad, or do you go against the grain because sad is already sad? That it makes
I
my
have an
head
idea.
explode.
You know, ready for something revolutionary? Why don't we ask her?
We can do that. My internet's been very iffy though, so just a heads up. Might have some issues here. So Robert, if something happens to me, you know it was Spectrum Internet. Tell the police. So let's get to it. Our guest today, Andrea Datzman. All right, she is the composer of the #1 movie of 2024. I think we can now call you the latest billion-dollar composer. We're excited to have Andrea Datzman joining the show. How you doing, Andrea?
I am doing great. Yeah, thank you for having me on. This is awesome.
Andrea, it's just great to see you. And I'll tell you something that you may be able to solve for me as we go forward. I, on my Apple calendar, typed in your name to make sure that this event was on my calendar. And what came up was Andrea Datzman lunch. And I thought, did we have lunch?
We did.
I thought, then I suddenly thought, oh, my brain is slowly coming back into focus.
I wondered if you would remember. That was a lifetime ago.
You survived a lunch with Robert. Mm-hmm. That's a good start.
What's amazing is that I suddenly realized I know exactly who Andrea Datzman is. I now remember the lunch. I don't remember what occasioned the lunch or what picture you had just worked on, or whether it was kind of
Why doesn't she tell us?
As I was about to say,
I can think of anything right now. This is awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, the story of the lunch.
The story of the lunch. I had maybe worked on a student film at that point. No, I was fresh out of USC, and I asked, I think, over email or maybe when you came to talk to our class, if you would be willing to go out and I could just pick your brain on different things. And we went to the farm
shop
in
Santa Monica.
And yeah, it was lovely. And Kevin Bacon was there, not with us.
Really, 6 degrees. Then we both.
I remember going,
Robert, you've never invited Kevin Bacon to our lunches. What is this?
Yeah, well, me and Kev, I said, Kev, I got a composer for you.
Just, stand back, be cool. Be a cool clip.
Right.
Be cool, Kevin.
Andrea, what do you remember from that lunch that maybe helped you moving forward into the business? Is there something that sticks out?
What the general was, what a wide world this is. How many different networks and positions and what opportunity there is out there. And that was something that continues to strike me. How many, when I first moved to LA, I thought there was composers and there was music. I thought there was a few jobs, maybe. And then walking in and understanding there's copyists, there's technicians, there's this whole wide world of jobs that are possible. And in getting to sit and hear Robert's experiences, that just really deepened that for me in a colorful way that drew me in even further.
It's really interesting and so instructive what you just said. People aren't aware of first of all, the team that any composer has to employ. They think it's just, there's this romantic idea, maybe not as much now. People are more sophisticated, but it's you with a pencil and score paper, and you're going to write music, and then somebody's going to play it, and that's the image. And something.
Yeah, they just think of Beethoven sitting there with a pencil and paper writing a film score.
But it's also debilitating in that way, because then it's all on you, right?
Right.
But if I kept frozen like that all the time, I would never be able to get done.
Not to mention a competing Disney property, because you mentioned Frozen, and you're going to be scoring that shortly. Don't
Oh,
tell
sure, yeah.
the current composer. But I think, first of all, how great for you. I mean, it's just so exciting what's happening. It's just thrilling,
Oh,
and
thank you.
I do believe that lunch was really kind of instrumental in
Really,
20
honestly,
years later.
I can trace it
You
all
can
back to
trace it all
that
back.
moment.
So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. But
Let's go back a little bit
Thank
before
you.
that, and by a little bit, probably a lot of bit.
Andrew
Did
the
a little
grandfather.
digging. Did a little digging. Your first kind of light bulb moment for film scoring was James Horner Glory. Is that right?
It's true, yeah. Which came to me, these little moments that if my sister hadn't stolen her summer camp boyfriend's uh, cassette of the Glory soundtrack, and then I wasn't stealing everything that she that one she actually let me keep, and that I had been listening to soundtracks but not understanding that what was really getting me was the score. I was a big fan of the Beaches soundtrack, of course,
Nice.
and Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid, and I listened to
Thank you.
those constantly. And you listen to those things now that you had on in those formative years, and every single note is in your DNA at that point.
Totally.
So snagging that score to Glory absolutely changed things for me, and it didn't all click until I went to college, because I did not think of myself as a composer or a possible composer.
Were you a musician at that time when you discovered the
Yeah.
Glory soundtrack?
I was all of 9 years old, and but I had been singing, and I started playing piano around 8. Whatever came into the house, I would try to play on, I guess. So even when it was a baby piano when I was little, making up my first song, "When I Am Miss America." That still
Save that.
hasn't happened.
That's a great start for a song. Don't forget that one.
I started playing on this amazing. My aunt had painted a piano, a player piano, this amazing green, and that came into my house about when I was 8 years old, and I started writing on that right away, but also playing. And then I grew up doing musical theater and dancing badly, but a lot of choirs and singing, and then I was in marching band. I played clarinet. I played anything that they would let me. I got bored easily and then distracted, so they said, "Hey, you want to try this version of the clarinet? Hey, how about you want to?" So thank goodness for my teachers, particularly shout out to Mr. Harden for being willing to put me in another place, even though I wasn't going to be contributing that much, because clearly there's another student learning a new instrument when they're trying to just make something sound good. When I got to college, I thought I was going to be a piano major, and I didn't get into the major. I thought, how is this possible? I spend all my time playing. And they said, "Your technique sucks, kid, but you can keep trying." And I was in a composition class, and they said, "You're in the major, right?" Like, no. Okay, well, sign up, because you can be in the major. You've clearly got a lot of composing experience. And it just hadn't struck me, because I kind of thought my options were like piano teacher, or what was not going to be a viable option was pop star. But as far as what I thought of, maybe it was just being a small town, and that's what I saw out there. But it all of a sudden clicked very quickly. Oh, right, I have been listening to this stuff my whole life. Okay, let's try this out. And tunnel vision after that was
I love
When they told
that.
you you weren't gonna major, what did that was that a moment where you said, I'm gonna prove you wrong, or was it super defeating for you? Like what went through your mind in terms of how you were gonna proceed?
It was so defeating because some of those things that go through your mind of, I guess I'll end up back home in a job that I don't have the same passion for as I do this. The sort of everything disappearing. And yes, they said you can be in the music major, but I I just didn't have. It was a very very quick amount of time. It was only a couple weeks, and just arriving at UC Santa Barbara, so just trying to change my and broaden my perspective very quickly. But I'm sure I would have ended up happy
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
nice.
back
It
home.
remind
That's
That's
glass
my
half full.
that's
I'm
my
I'm wearing an
life
Olympics
view
hat,
anyway.
and it reminds me of when you watch the Olympics and the athlete trains their entire childhood and young adult life and then has 4 seconds to prove everything and they don't win it. And it's like, what goes through their mind? And that kind of reminds
Mm.
me of that moment a little bit. For you.
Andrea, there's like a gap though of connection, which is, so you are admitted to composition major, but not everyone in a composition major at a college understands the relationship of that to film composing. I think now more than ever, 2024, they're busting out of all these schools film music programs. I'm not sure if UC Santa Barbara at that point said we concentrate on film music,
No, it was
or we want you to be a
not the program for it.
contemporary composer or arranger songwriter. How did the film music bug creep in?
Well, the missing link there, the reason why my technique wasn't so great, even with all those hours spent at the piano, is I would get home from school and sit down to practice, um, because that was the time that I should be either doing homework or practicing, right? And my parents didn't know the difference when I would just get distracted and just start playing.
Mm,
And I would just be making things up at that point.
mm,
And that would be how I would process my day. I would just sit there at the piano for an hour and play and play and play and process through my fingers, I guess. So I I was so used to processing emotion that way.
mm.
And I love film. I When I was a kid, I also thought maybe I would be an actress. Of course, I just did not. I think I had one tough rejection and said, "That's it, nope." Um, and I thought for some reason film scoring made more sense, that there would be less rejection. I don't know. But
How'd that work out?
I love, well, you just get good at it, right? But
Yeah.
also, it feels less personal. It feels like it makes sense. Like, I can make sense of why somebody wants something to sound this way or not. Um, I can adjust tempo, I can adjust orchestration, and I'm just amazed that actors can transfer that into their physical being and not take rejection with that same sensitivity. That's an amazing part of the job that I don't think I have the qualifications for.
You're modest, because
Well,
some composers who actually don't often get to do another film when they react emotionally to the director saying, this doesn't work for me. Some composers, even if they take it personally, of course, the real pros say, "Oh, what would you? Can you express what you'd like it differently?" The ones who don't go on to the next film say, "Oh, I really love that. You sure?" And it's, hey man, it's his film. And I just tell the composer, last time I checked, or her film. So
of course, it's very
that
difficult sometimes
yeah.
because you process something in one way. You have to feel very authentically emotional about it. and you've connected to the picture, to each thing in this particular way, and you have to wipe that slate. So it does take a minute sometimes to go.
And you have
My
just
logic
scored.
brain immediately comes in and goes, of course, yes, of course. And then I get off and go, oh, all right, how can I switch? I guess it's like anytime you want to learn somebody's perspective you never had before, you have to open up that door, say, what does it take to feel this?
Oh, that's amazing. That is exactly what your job is taking yourself, removing yourself from the shoes you're in and walking around to look at a different way of looking at the picture, the object, the emotion.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about this is we are talking to the best person on the planet to have this conversation with for this reason. You just scored a film about emotion. And so it's not like you're scoring, Denzel Washington coming over the ridge. Well, that's an emotion and whatever every other movie's about. This is about how do you score embarrassment or
It's kind of meta,
sadness or
like
anxiety
to the fullest.
straight up. This is no filter. You have to actually score the emotion. I don't think until this conversation I realized what an assignment for a composer.
I came strangely qualified for this film.
Oh, tell us why.
Because I have a hobbyist. It became a need for understanding neuropsychology. I had years that I took off because I was ill. Actually, I had we had a big mold situation in our home, and then that opened up my immune system to Lyme disease. So I had several years where I was out of the game. I had that total ego death of, guess I'm never doing this again. I could hardly hear. I was having seizures every day. It was a terrible period of time for about 5 years. And I had been getting slowly sick too. But in fact, you see a picture of the first Inside Out, Michael and I at the premiere, and I've got that was what I thought was going to be my last movie. I've got on my arm I've got a PICC line where I was doing antibiotics intravenously every day.
Oh, wow.
So I went through all these treatments and nothing was working, even after we figured out the mold situation, everything. And I had a diagnosis at one point where they said I got a functional MRI because I always felt like there was something with my brain. My brain was not helping me anymore. It was I was so foggy all the time, and I just felt like something was wrong. And I had this fMRI, and they said, "Well, you have PTSD." I said, "Wrong file." I said, "I've never done a tour in Afghanistan. I'm a fairly optimistic person. I don't know what you've got there." And they said, "We don't know your life, but we can see your brain, and we can see your amygdala firing all the time." Now, what I eventually figured out to help my own healing was to help my immune system come back. I had to get my limbic system to come out of this constant state of firing. That's your fight or flight, just on all the time. That's something with PTSD, and that can happen out of illnesses like Lyme disease and chronic mold exposure. If you get this form of complex PTSD, which can also be called complex PTSD or limbic system impairment. So your limbic system is where that's your emotional center. So there's this dysregulation going on where your little amygdala is firing all the time, and it's making you constantly vigilant. Now, when you are in that adrenaline center, what do you need to do? You need to run from a tiger. You don't need to plan your meals. You don't need to
I'm
fight.
gluten free.
Yeah, you don't need to fight a cold. So your executive function, planning, your immune system, fighting off a cold, or fighting off Lyme disease if you had it way back when, or digesting that breakfast. No, you don't need these brain centers. Your energy centers go in a different direction. So in order to just stay vigilant all the time, and so I went through a lot of healing to help retrain my limbic system in order to get. And as soon as I started doing that, I started getting better. And it took a little while, but my immune system actually ended up taking care of the rest once my own immune system was able to come online. So in that time, I learned a lot about neuropsychology and a lot about our emotional centers and how we interact with that, how we value them, how we give ourselves compassion for them, because you can't just shut anything off and say, all right, I'm never gonna be afraid again. Well, then you're gonna do a lot of things that are not.
I think we have the script for Inside Out 3 right here. I don't know.
It's just the greatest, and it's Olympic. You, Kenny, mentioned what you did is come back from, any athlete that they're never going to, pitch again. They're never going to throw a pass again. They're never going to do a high jump again. You not only came back, you won the Olympics. It's a triumphant story.
I won the limbic system Olympics right here.
The Olympics.
You're a Olympian. Yeah.
An Olympian. Yes,
You are a Olympian. That's so exciting. Can you tell us? Because I know, Kenny, you wanted to.
Well, here, let me. I want to bring this up because
you
mentioned Michael Giacchino, but I want to go back a little bit because you were talking about being in school, and I think this is maybe how you met Michael, but he offered your class a pretty incredible opportunity from what I was researching. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was? And it seems pretty unique. I've never heard this before.
He was so generous to do this. His parents are both teachers, so it's always been important to him that he gives back in this way too. And he offered our class at the time because he had both Lost and Alias going. And he allowed us to do a couple of cues of score prep. So we would take the file from what he'd written and turn it into the score, the notes on the page, and get to come to the scoring session and conduct the cue, sit in on the whole session, and then even go to the dub for it. So get to see this whole process through, which was an incredible experience. So I worked on episode 17 of Lost.
Wow.
Which was recorded on March 17th, so St. Patrick's Day. And after every 10, they started up with playing an Irish jig.
That's so awesome. What do you think that experience, I mean, obviously in school you get to do a lot of these things, but to go with Michael Giacchino to probably at the time the biggest show on TV and go through that experience, how did that help you maybe jumpstart into, I mean, you ended up working with him, so was that part of that, or did that come later?
That came later, as I was looking for work after that. And of course, every single one of the experiences that I got to have going through scoring in any way, whether it was an exercise or helping someone else on a project, broaden my perspective. It's just those little practices where you make a mistake, or you watch somebody else make a mistake, or you watch somebody get some little trick. It's like, whoa, that just sounded like magic, and I never would have experienced that if I hadn't just taken the chance. Each one of those experiences build to this place where I am now, where you can be on the stage with 83 people out on the stage, and another 25 in the booth that you're you're trying to communicate with very quickly. Um, yeah, that all came together in a beautiful way that way.
There's a kind of distance between that moment on the USC when I don't know, and also your illness, but was there a period where you were just arranging, orchestrating, where you were learning these things? Because I know that you worked on a number of films, Cars 2, Speed Racer, Up, Ratatouille. I mean, first of all, what a great apprenticeship, if that's what it was, or
Absolutely, it was. Yeah, uh, I was working for so long in this way where I would get to be from spotting session to final mix delivery. So while you could say, "Oh, this is your, your first theatrical feature," um, it definitely was my first in the pressure seat. But having gotten to be in that role for so long, I got to do a lot of arrangements and a lot of orchestrating, and a lot of session coordination. And that's a big part of it. Man, if you can't get the score to the stage, you're not getting hired next time. I don't care what kind of great music you write. You are not getting to the stage if you can't have a good flow, if you can't get your stuff written on time, if you can't organize yourself that way, if you can't organize with your team, if you can't communicate well and create a great relationship with your orchestrator and your mixer, none of that's going to go down.
I I mean, I kind of assume that people know that, but hearing you say it is so important. It's what I've always known about making anything as an artist, which is there's a slight distance between imagination and execution.
Mm-hmm.
And execution turns out to be all. You can imagine the movie you're gonna write. You can imagine the great song you're going to sing. You can imagine it forever. In front of the microphone, in front of the camera, in front of the word processor, can you nail it? And for a composer, what people don't realize, the enormity of what you have to nail under the gun, which leads me to the question you kind of referenced. When you moved into the big chair and it was you, did you find any, ooh, this is slightly different from watching somebody else take the heat?
Absolutely, yeah. In that chair at that moment, trying to move as fast as possible and listening to everything that I've just heard, everything that I want out of it, and then wanting to incorporate all the important opinions that I have around me. First of all, making sure that my director feels like they're getting what they want to feel, like they are feeling totally connected. And so that's number one. Are we there? And then going to what notes do I need to address? And then I've got my orchestrator there, Jeff Pricka, who's my right hand and my second brain there for sure. So, and that enables me to really, I trust that he's going to hear everything that went slightly wonky as far as a translation from what I wanted to what was coming through the mixing room. And then we've got producer, we've got a music producer. Michael Giacchino was there in the music producing role. He's got wonderful feedback as well, that helped us move faster. And we want to just get things done honestly as quickly as possible, so we can also play back and see it in a long form and say, okay, big picture, broad perspective, does it build the way that we want over a long period of time? And then if it doesn't, then we may have time to come back. But if we don't move fast enough in the beginning, we'll never have that opportunity.
I have a couple technical questions. In no particular order. First of all, you mentioned Michael and you and the arranger and orchestrator. I wonder if there was an annoying studio executive in the room saying, that's too sad. So that's one question in no particular order while I remember. Secondly, what level of image were you looking at? Because with animation, I've seen it scored to sketches, to storyboards, to unfinished scenes where he jumps here, but I don't have it, the animator be in the room. So I wondered how complete your image was. I think my question was studio executive, complete image. And where did you record? And did you have pre-records and an orchestra on one, pre-records behind you and an orchestra on one side of the glass? And how was that process? Can I remember all those three questions in a
Well,
row?
actually, this is great because I wanted to mention my score recordist and mixer, Warren Brown, as well on this.
A
So
Canadian.
I'll get to him. My proud Canadian Warren Brown.
Yep.
I Okay.
What kind of picture were you looking at?
Well, by the time we got to the stage in March on Inside Out 2, we're looking at mostly locked picture.
Hmm.
So almost all of it is finished animation in to some state. We may be missing lighting,
Did you write to locked picture though?
not all of it. There was definitely um, editing that my music editor Steve Davis. In the end, he had a big job on certain parts. As some things, you're the director and editor and producer are still finding some of the momentum that so little will change, but they'll find that, hey, if we just linger on her a second longer, it actually really works bigger here. So, and that can be a real challenge. But also, sometimes there have been parts where I'll go like, oh, they ruined the build, and then I go back and it ends up doing just the right thing because then the picture is doing just the right thing, and it actually does help me musically. Because then even though I have to go back and maybe change some phrasing, it does actually end up working. So a
Nice.
lot of the time
That's
I'm working
such a
to,
positive composer expert response that it
that's
makes it better. That's you are in great company. You are in the company of the greatest of all composers who say, I think it made it better.
well, that's me right now. A couple months out. In the moment, I won't always say that it. You can say something afterwards. Oh, well, it's the best thing for it. But in the moment, it's like, how do I get this done, and also get the rest of what I need to do done
And how do
to
I
the
make a
right.
5/4 measure work?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
they want that
Mhm.
extra beat, and it's how do you make it feel organic so that it doesn't go,
Yeah.
wow, that was a weird.
And that's where a great music editor, it just can save you, because if you know that you've got somebody like that, they can take it and edit it in the tiniest bits as you go along to where it sounds just like you wish that you had had the time to make it,
Yeah.
or better, because somebody that you trust their instincts also, and you go, whoa, I didn't think of that, and that's great, go for it. And
What
that's
about the
another part of the game.
technicality issue that happens to composers on a lot of dates, which is you have pre-records
Yeah.
and they're all sussed out and they're mapped out, and you got your Logic or Pro Tools session that's 1,000 different instruments wailing away, and the orchestra is on the other side of the glass, if that's the way you recorded, which I'd be curious, and somebody says, I want an extra beat. Oh, yeah. Tell me if that happened, where that happened, and how you addressed it.
A lot of times with that, with this score, there was not that much for pre-records that
Oh, great.
was very rhythmic, where it really would affect it. Got an incredible member of the team, though, Vinny Cirilli, who's on the fly Pro Tools editing, and he will make that work in a second. And he just is on it. And sometimes, you start to take it for granted because he's so good. He's like, I do actually need a minute.
Oh, that's funny.
Come on now. But for the most part on this, we were able to make it work with that sort of editing.
Great.
And
where did you record?
We recorded at Warner Brothers in Burbank.
With a big orchestra.
With a big orchestra, yeah. And
83, you said?
And you had asked about our fantastic music exec, Mr. Matt Walker, sitting in the back of the room.
I've known him for, I don't even want to say how long I've known Matt. Great, you're lucky.
The term comes to mind, enabler. But I know people have a funny, but he's always just looking at how he can enable.
Beautiful. That's his strength.
Okay, what do we need to move here? How can I help? And also, maybe that wouldn't be the best use of our time. And it just and he's also incredibly passionate about music too. So
yes,
his ears will pick out themes, and it's great to see him get excited about things as well, because it's really energizing.
I stayed through all of the credits, of course, to read who was what and who played and all the musicians now listed, and I liked one particular credit in the fine print as it's rolling past. Vocals. Andrea Datzman.
You did look at the fine print. Wow.
That was the fine print, and I thought, how wonderful. And you said earlier in this conversation that you thought at one point maybe you'd sing and be a pop star and all that. You sang on the score.
Well, I never thought I'd be a pop star because I didn't have the but I didn't have the guts to. But
I think that what you're doing is far harder and far braver. We'll save that for the next conversation. But...
Well, okay, so it's sort of hidden in here. So when you go into the core belief system, when I first watched that scene, first of all, I was gobsmacked that I got so much about this movie that just made me go, I cannot believe I get to score this scene. Are you kidding me? And that was one that just, Matt actually and I, in the spotting session, Matt Walker's looking over me going, oh, you're so lucky. I'm like, I know.
That's great.
But watching it, I immediately thought, I had this inspiration from thinking about listening to Radiohead.
Right on.
Everything in its right place. There's this this sort of mumbled reverse sort of thing.
Legendary.
Yeah. And it popped into my head thinking, something like that would be like the voices in the back of Riley's mind. All of these core beliefs down here, how are they interacting? How do they affect this? And it felt like this cathedral to me down there. Something that I love about a cathedral is, like, you imagine you can, all these, the reverberations of prayer, of people's hopes and dreams and their needs, up amongst that structure. And I sat down one day and just started doing it on a pitch. So that sort of thing. And so I pitched it. And so you've got 3 or 4 notes doing that. And I re-recorded it later, and it turned out just that very first go at it. Sometimes the
Always.
very first go, even with, like
Always.
your standby mic that you're like, this will work, and it's so clicky and poppy, and it's, but it has the right, because you're in that area of inspiration.
Did you reverse it, or did you just leave it that way?
Just left it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, me even bringing up Radiohead is like, I can tell you the inspiration, but it
By the
certainly
way,
doesn't.
it's the best headline ever.
That's-
Inside Out composer inspired by Radiohead. Tom York says, "Without me."
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Okay.
that's
Well,
so-
then let's go then to also the Cramps. Let's go to Joan Jett. Let's go to so
I
many.
think that's so important, though. What's funny about that is people think, I think this is a nice place to rest on this conversation, in that people say, this sounds like movie music. I get a lot of things where people say, it sounds like movie music. So should I be a film composer? And I think, movie music to me could be Radiohead, the Cramps, Joan Jett, a polka, a banjo, a gamelan orchestra. Movie music is whatever's right for the movie. And what you've just described is your inspirations can come from pop, punk, rock, orchestral, glory.
Mhm.
And I think my question about glory is, have you seen, or when did you see the film with the score, and did that change things, educate you?
Well, because I had heard the score for a while before I got to see the film, and I had been listening to the score while on these long car trips,
Yeah.
these long road trips, and I had already made all these associations,
Oh,
just with rolling hills, and when it went into the picture, I felt like this is where it belongs. This is where it was conceived of, and actually being able to draw that association was amazing, because it felt electrically connected.
that's amazing. By the way, I recommend two things that are pertinent to this incredible conversation. Andrea, just inspiring conversation for me. Also, to know that you are just kind of triumphant in your personal journey, not just the musical. I think I used a cello on that cue. Well, that's interesting, but what you went through to get to using the cello on any cue is, to me, fabulous. I recommend two strange things to you and our audience. Two great things. The director of Glory has a book that came out 6 months ago. And if for nothing else, read the chapter on Glory, scoring it,
Thank you for that. I will.
casting it. The director is my close personal friend, and I say that often, but I really mean it because I've known him since we were both teenagers. Ed Zwick directed Glory, and the book is called Hits, Flops, and Other Near Misses. And the Glory chapter is fantastic. And working with James Horner. So you made me think, oh man, that's so great that was the score, because Ed felt the same way when he heard that music for the first time going into his film. So you'll see that. I also recommend, because I just saw it, and what you said really made me think about the brand new documentary that's just come out, I think on Amazon, which is Celine Dion, I Am. And I certainly liked Celine Dion, thought she
Oh
was
yeah.
wonderful and beautiful, and actually had a great opportunity to work with her on a little film that we did. And this, I now adore her. I literally, because of what she has gone through with her illness, which is portrayed unvarnished in this doc, what she is going through and what inner strength she has. And boy, does she let the camera in to places you would never think any diva would allow to show what it's like. So when you were describing what you went through with your situation, I thought the Andrea Datzman documentary is going to be absolutely fabulous. We're going to get the full story. Anyhow, I don't want to wear you out. I think we have part 2, Inside Out 3 coming up, and everything else. I don't even want to guess what's coming up because I'm sure that you have an exciting summer and fall. And
I do. I'm working on some really fun things.
anything you can share?
Not just at this point, but
Okay.
so
Mission Impossible 11.
it's nice when you have momentum to
shoot.
just keep on going. And I have been just like, okay, once that door's open, just pull out every idea that you have too and work on it because you just have that. So I'd say remember that every time you're burned out at the end. Say like try to keep that just some structure so you can keep.
These are good problems to have
yourself.
for any artist. Well, Kenny,
The bar's definitely set, Andrea.
Yeah,
So
only right. Next film has to be actually. If you were gonna, as my friend Michael Kamen would say, now's the time. And maybe not now, but shortly, he would call it left footing it, which is instead of doing the next billion-dollar blockbuster, he would say, right now, can you find me like an indie little? I just want to do. He literally would ask me,
Yeah.
Searchlight have anything they need a composer? Don't even worry about the dough. I want to do a little film right now because he had just done Lethal Weapon and Die Hard and all these things. I think you do 3 more blockbusters and then we talk. But you got some blockbusters ahead of you. I'm sure they just lined up.
Just anything that you can feel like you really connect to and you bring the right voice to.
Yeah, you know what? You're absolutely right. That's
the best
perfect
answer.
We have the right voice here
Yeah.
for a whole range of emotions.
I had a little technical difficulties there, so I'm looking forward to hearing the second half of this interview.
We
We
hardly missed
actually
you.
talked about you.
Oh,
the whole
good.
Yeah,
time.
the whole
Yeah.
thing. It's a little. I'm a little ashamed of
You
some
gonna
of
make
the
some
things I
headlines?
shared, but I think that you'll be okay with it. It's just you might want to stay inside for a couple weeks because
We're gonna.
it's embarrassing.
We're getting funding together for the Kenny Holmes documentary now.
Oh,
Based on this.
that will bomb.
Yeah,
That'll set the record for the lowest.
Who? Well, if it was a biopic, who are we having play you?
Oh, wow. That's a funny question. People used to say, this is years ago, and I probably look different now, but people used to say Josh Hartnett all the time, and I didn't get it.
Okay.
you need a big. I'm sorry. We need to go
Yeah.
bigger. I'm thinking right now, Austin Butler for you,
Okay.
and I think Andrea, we got Emma Stone lined up,
Oh, all right.
I see it. I see it.
and
Robert is he could just be himself.
oh God.
Your breakout role.
That's it. We'll do some stunt casting.
never too
We'll have
early.
Robert Kraft as Robert Kraft.
Well, what's happening in my brain is like what's in Inside Out too, where it's the second let's think of everybody everything you know about music, and then nothing. There's just
That's
every
funny.
actor's name ever, all gone.
Oh yeah.
It just happened to me, so I was thinking, who would? I don't know.
It's funny you say that because I watch Jeopardy all the time, and I'm like, I would crush on this. And then I did especially sports Jeopardy when it existed, and then I actually did the tryout. I knew nothing.
That's so funny.
It was
perfect.
so humbling. I was like, I thought I knew everything, but once you're in the hot seat and the timer's going,
Kenny, by the way, I hate to crush your joy factor, but I asked Andrea exactly that question. What was it like in the hot seat after all the preparation of watching? Because some people say, I never realized what this pressure was like. I never realized how different
I'll
it
go
was.
back and listen to it. The audience has already heard this story. So.
You'll hear it. Audience, Andrea,
a quick reminder
Kenny.
to our listeners, you can follow us. There's a number of ways. Instagram @ScoreMovie, Twitter @ScoreThePodcast, or X, whatever it's called now. TikTok, Score the Podcast. YouTube, you can watch these episodes on our YouTube channel, Epic Clef Media, or now on Spotify, you can watch on video as well. And if you're listening, take a screenshot and tag us on the socials. Let us know you're checking out the show. Andrea,
That's our screenshot shot. Come on.
double shot,
I just
double
did it.
shot. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Andrea, thank you so much for coming on the show, and thank you for saving the theaters this year so far. You guys are
All
killing
me,
it.
right here. You know, that's when a story like this can be news. That's an amazing thing. You know, when it's so easy to get dejected by scary stories in the news, and when a company like Pixar that supports art and artists in this way gets a win like this, I think it's a win for everyone. So I'm just thrilled.
And I don't know if you guys talked about this, but
We did.
can we close out with the triple dent one more time?
Ooh, sure. All right. Triple dent gum will make you smile. Triple dent gum lasts a while. Triple dent gum will help you, mister, to punch bad breath right in the kisser. Triple dent gum.
There it is.
That is $1 million performance, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Andrea.
Andrea
We will
Datzman,
see
thank you very much
you.
for coming on the show.
Yeah.
So much.